Mum and Dad first met at a barbecue in a backyard in Ipswich. Dad was incredibly gregarious, incredibly outgoing. Mum was incredibly shy, she was a bookworm. They were desperately trying to create a family, but they couldn't. I think it was a pretty natural decision for her to go, well, I can't have kids, so I'm going to foster kids.
I really did win the lottery when we got placed with Mum and Dad. But Mum still had such a big heart that she's like, no, your parents are writing to you. I expect you to respond to those letters.
Stephen's birth parents were Michael and Mary Shelley. They'd fallen in love at a psychiatric hospital in the 1970s. A shared fixation with the Bible soon turned into something else.
He had this stunning revelation that he, in fact, was the Michael from the Bible, and that Mary's job was to provide him with children to repopulate the earth. They ditched all their belongings and they hitchhiked to far north Queensland.
Mary gave birth to their first son in a rainforest. Elijah attracted the attention of authorities.
He was taken to see a paediatric specialist and he was judged to be underweight, so he was placed into a foster home north of Brisbane. Michael and Mary decided to declare holy war against the state of Queensland. Michael recruited a disciple who drove back to North Brisbane and kidnapped Elijah in broad daylight. So there was a national manhunt. Elijah was eventually found in the ACT. He was flown back to Queensland and placed into a foster care. Meanwhile, Michael and Mary disappeared into the Blue Mountains, west of Sydney, and they had two more sons named Saul and Joshua. They wanted to reunite their sons with their older brother Elijah, and so they decided to go back to Queensland to attempt another kidnapping. Saul and Joshua were subsequently placed into foster care. They would be raised as Stephen and John Blaine, my older brothers.
The Shelleys fled to New Zealand, where Mary would conceive again at the age of 47, a little girl named Hannah.
My mum desperately wanted to reunite that little girl with her older brothers. In an incredibly audacious extradition, Hannah was taken from New Zealand and delivered to a pub in country Queensland where my mum and dad and 5 foster siblings were waiting on the front patio, and Hannah, at the age of 1, met her older brothers for the first time. Michael and Mary came back to Queensland in 2000, and so they embarked on a mission to uncover the identities of their children. They were stalking Anna Bligh, they were stalking Peter Beattie. It was a very public sort of thing. They were arrested repeatedly, they were sent to prison. Mary was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Mary Shelley knocked on our front door in Toowoomba, and this was an astonishing moment in all of our lives.
Got a phone call, Mum's like, hey, you've got to come home, your real mum's here. I'm like, oh shit.
We were being inundated with letters. It was a very genuine fear that the Shelleys would attempt to kidnap Hannah or would attempt to harm my parents. That was a fear that was conveyed to us by social workers, by police officers, and so we were very much under siege. I think the most terrifying moment for Hannah and myself was one day when Mary rocked up and we'd been left home alone for a short period of time. I was 11 and Hannah was 13. And we hid underneath the bed, called the police. We called my dad, who rushed home. The police came. Mary had completely disappeared. And so Hannah went to her bedroom a little bit later, and lying on her bed was her biological mother, Mary. The house filled with the sound of Hannah's scream.
Managed to talk her into walking to the front gate, and then I remember John coming out and just absolutely abusing her. I just remember thinking, I have no relationship with you.
I just want Mum to say hi. Say hi, Mum.
Hello, Mum.
Here's Dad.
I think the thing that enraged Michael Shelley most was the fact that his biological children, at least to his view, had been brainwashed by my father to love physical contact and competitive sport. They were all making Queensland teams for various sports. Meanwhile, he didn't know about my existence and the fact that the Blaine's biological son was terrible at sport.
If you had put some of that intelligence to good use, Michael Shelley could have done some real good in the world. Even after I moved to Perth, they managed to find out where I lived. They found out that I was a beer rep at the Swan Brewery.
My siblings would have been completely open to having a relationship with Michael and Mary. It was really Michael's incapacity to have a conversation where the basis of it wasn't the fact that my parents were child molesters. If he had just been able to remove that kind of vehemence and that kind of rage, there actually was every possibility of having a relationship with his children.
I was given a better opportunity with Tom and Lenore, whereas Elijah had some really, really bad foster parents when he was growing up. When you already come from a destabilised background and you go into that, it's no wonder he ended up having substance abuse problems, and it's no wonder his mental health issues presented in a lot more serious way, and it's kind of no wonder he chose to take his own life about 10 years ago. Mum and Dad certainly felt that because they petitioned quite hard to get Elijah to come and live with us, and to this day I have no idea why the Department of Families didn't make that choice.
Michael and Mary were fed up with Australia. They went to South Africa where they stalked Desmond Tutu. Michael spent 6 months in various South African prisons and immigration camps. They tracked down the Pope at his holiday house in the Italian Alps. They were rocking up to Australian embassies across Europe, threatening the people who worked at these embassies and trying to spread the story of their children being removed to a global audience. Mum had always joked throughout the stalking of the Shelleys that she wanted to write a book about the Shelley gang one day. And I promised her that I would write this book, and Mum had always thought about this book as being a book about the Shelleys. Over the next decade, the book would become about much more than just the Shelleys. It would become a book also about my parents. I wanted to put out positive depictions of foster carers, positive depictions of foster children.
Yes, I'm Hannah, Alex's older sister.
Living in Bundaberg, just turned 40.
Happy birthday, mate.
Growing up, the child protection space, there was a lot like the Blaine kids, they're amazing, like they're intelligent and they're achieving in sport and all these wonderful
Give yourself a rap,
yeah,
Jess.
yeah.
They made us feel so loved that when we actually thought about it in hindsight, there was never a time that we didn't feel part of the family.
What a story. And if it has raised any issues with you, you can always contact Lifeline on 13 11 14.
What a great testament to the importance of foster parents as well,
Yeah.
amongst everything else.